I'm Mikah Sargent from Tech News Weekly, and this week, my co-host Jason Howell and I talked to Kevin Marks of microformats.org all about the news at Twitter. There's lots of news to talk about. Elon Musk and Twitter making changes to the way the tweets get embedded and edited, but I mean, there's a lot. There is a lot to cover. And then we talk to Prafulla, Dhariwal, and Aditya Ramesh of OpenAI about DALL 2. That is the artificial intelligence engine that lets you type in strange phrases and see amazing artwork outputted. You don't want to miss this conversation. It's so very cool. Then we head into our stories of the week, where we talk about Reddit's place. It's artwork created by the internet in a very collaborative way. And my story of the week about the Senate bill that has big tech shaking in its boots and telling all sorts of interesting stories about how it's going to affect you. Stay tuned for Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 229, recorded Thursday, April 7th, 2022.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV has everything you need to level up your IT skills while you enjoy the journey. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use the code TNW30 at checkout.
And by Expressvpn. Stop paying full price for streaming services and only getting access to a fraction of their content. Get your money's worth and secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/TNW today and get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package.
Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
I'm the other guy, Jason Howell. Good to see you, Mikah. And this week, I don't know that I expected for a week to have like Twitter in the news, not just on one story, but so many different directions.
It was
it's like
boom, 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 boom,
everything
boom.
under the sun.
Twitter was popping, and not just like the normal way that it pops, but like news about Twitter was popping.
Yes, indeed. So let's talk all about it. Twitter, as we just said, big in the news this week. In some ways, the conversation has been somewhat predictable, right? This isn't the first time that we've heard about a possible edit function coming to Twitter. That's been big news this week. In other ways, very unpredictable. Who would have guessed Elon Musk buying nearly a 10% stake in the company, joining the board, although that seems to be kind of in flux at the moment. But anyways, we've got a lot to discuss. So today we have Kevin Marks, open web advocate and co-founder of Microformats, joining this show. It's good to have you here, Kevin. Thank you.
It's nice to be here again. It's been a while.
Yeah,
nice to see you.
It is. It's good to see you too. And I should also mention you're going to be on This Week in Google next week as well. So you're getting a double dose of Kevin Marks over the course of the coming week. So thank you. And perfect timing, especially. You had actually kind of reached out initially because you had posted about all the things happening, and primarily about kind of this edit facility that's the conversation happening at Twitter right now. So let's start there. And I think this conversation, it's easy to think that we're going to go into edit button functionality, but it actually goes into different directions, which I think are even more compelling, at least at this point. You wrote on your site, kevinmarks.com, about the type of editing that's happening right now, not just an edit button, but changes that Twitter is making behind the scenes that's impacting embeds on other sites. Tell us a little bit about the API contract that Twitter has apparently broken very recently as a result.
So this is quite a subtle thing. The way Twitter embeds work is you copy the embed out of the top right corner of the tweet, and it gives you a block of HTML to put into your site. And that has a block quote and then the actual text of the tweet and the link, and then a strip link that calls Twitter's widgets.js, which when that runs, it looks for those block quotes with the Twitter tweet on, and then it inflates them to look like that does at the top there. So it basically inserts an iframe, puts in the Twitter logo and all the links. So it's basically saying this really is a tweet. Now before, as you can see, that second bit there in the yellow, without that, script, it would look like this on my site. We're working on edit button, and it would look differently on everyone's site. It would look how a block quote looks on their site. So it would use the default styling. You could style it to look more tweet-like, but the point is it wouldn't have the Twitter logo, and it wouldn't have that presentation you get for the embedded ones. Now, the thing that changed was that it used to be when you delete the tweet, that block quote stays there and they don't put the decoration in. But what they've done now is they've put in a blank tweet template when the tweet's deleted. And also, they're actually removing the block quote text from the site. So if you write a long post with a bunch of quoted tweets in it and refer to them, then those quoted tweets disappear, and you end up with blank spaces in the middle of your flow. So if you're doing the kind of journalism, something like BuzzFeed, where they have lots of quoted tweets, or you're doing the kind of journalism where you're reporting on a conversation that happened partly on Twitter and partly elsewhere, all the tweets, if they've been deleted, will disappear and they'll turn into these white blobs. But also the text that you were quoting from them will also disappear. And so this means that effectively Twitter has now edited a lot of websites and a lot of news websites as well by removing those previously quoted tweets. So yeah, BuzzFeed is the obvious example, because they do lots of stories that are, here are all the tweets about this, and if those tweets or those tweet accounts are subsequently deleted, then they end up with these white spaces in it. But a lot of news stories have been affected because President Trump's account was suspended, and therefore anything they were quoting from those was showing in that fallback way, and is now been removed from the site entirely, which can make quite a mess of a story. So it's a subtle thing in terms of how you think about it behaving, but it is affecting other people's websites and how they use these tweets.
I think what strikes me about this is that it seems like this is something that was merely discovered and not announced, and yet. Which tells me that maybe Twitter, either they wanted to pretend like nothing happened, or they truly believe that this wasn't a big deal. And it occurs to me that so many articles have these embeds in them, and whether from a reader's perspective, I care less if I'm seeing the actual tweet with the colorful Twitter embed in there. What I want is the context, and that seems really important. That seems like a very important major change for Twitter to make, and not make a whole lot of public knowledge about. I mean, you've been in contact with Twitter engineering about this. What are they saying about this behavior?
Well, so I noticed this about a week ago, the 30th, I think it was, because I was looking at one of my old posts for some reason, and I noticed that I had a post where I quoted some tweets, and then the response to them, and then the first two tweets in the thread got deleted because they were out of, the person realized they were out of order, but so the quotes were there. And I went back and looked at that post, and instead of those quotes, there were white blobs, which I thought was odd. And so I looked at it, and I posted a tweet atting in Twitter Eng to point this out. And I got one response from a Twitter PM saying that they're doing it to better respect when people have chosen to delete their tweets. And very soon we'll have better messaging that explains why the content is no longer available, and my DMs are open. So I responded to that in the thread, and I sent some DMs as well, but I haven't heard anything further. And in fact, Eleanor Harding hasn't tweeted since that tweet. So, maybe she's away or something. I don't know. But that's the communication I've had with them, and some of the other people who've reported on this have called Twitter about this and not had a direct response. So a week later, when they started talking about tweet editing, I wrote this post up to sort of give the examples and the details. Because the tricky thing is that when they first designed this post, they spent quite a bit of time thinking about it. Ben Ward, who implemented the feature, he's a microformats guy like me and works on the web, is of that era. And he thought a lot about how you quote things on other people's sites and how that should work. And the way he designed it is actually quite clever. Because the point is, the block quote is the official HTML way of citing somebody else. If you put a block quote in, then you're saying, I'm quoting this, and there's a standard way of marking that up. But then he looks for the ones that are labeled Twitter tweet and inflates them into this thing that says, this really is a tweet. Look, here's a Twitter logo on it. It looks like a tweet. It has all the buttons you would use to retweet and respond to it and so on. So that was a smart move. But he also thought about the case of when you delete the tweet. And he said at the time, what did he say? He said, it's quite a good one. The embed code is a block quote containing the tweet content. If it's deleted or 1,000 years in the future, the text remains. Mm-hmm. So he was thinking about longevity and the sort of structure of the web for that. And then what's happened is they've basically broken that contract. And they say this on the site where they talk about how the embed stuff works. They say that if the tweet is deleted, it will not display the fully rendered tweet. So they have broken the way the API works without announcing it. And I think obviously they were experimenting with it and trying it out, but I think this is a failed experiment. I think this is a bad idea. And part of it is that if they're trying to respect when people delete their tweets, I understand that, but that doesn't mean I think the not fleshing it out into a full tweet preserves that ambiguity, which is a little subtle. It's basically, I can create a block quote that says anything and attribute it to somebody, and my site could show that, and then people do this all the time. But if the tweet has gone, then Twitter won't be confirming that that's what it said. And I think that's the right level of ambiguity if someone deletes it. Whereas removing the text of the tweet from my side is overreaching there, because, as I say, it's part of a historic conversation. And the same thing will happen if you take your account private. Then the tweets will no longer show up and so on. So the nuance is there for the different combinations, because some people take their accounts private or public at different points, and then the link through will disappear and the verification will disappear, and it'll come back if they make it public again. So it's a dynamic thing that makes sense as Twitter saying, yes, this really is still a public tweet. And I understand that Twitter are thinking more and better about how to deal with conversations on the site and when people quote one another and respond to each other in different ways. And I think that's a good thing broadly. I think they've been a bit too extreme on the anyone going to say anything to anyone, it's your problem to deal with it. And they're working to improve that. I do welcome that, but I think it's overreach to change other people's sites, I would say especially news sites, but it's not just news sites. It's
everyone's,
anyone who's quoting conversations or putting stuff up there.
And I mean, there is the argument that this never originated with us to begin with, right? Like it was always kind of within Twitter's control, let's say, same as like YouTube embeds. We've gone through this before, but I mean, that's an argument for the open web, which is something that you are very passionate about. And I think from my perspective, this really indicates the direction of Twitter. It also probably makes a lot of sense why suddenly the edit button is a part of their internal conversation. They're being more public about, we're working on an edit button, because their dedication to permanence is perhaps not what it used to be. I think
it's part of that. I think the other thing is that this was designed when tweets were 140 characters and that was it. This was
that's true.
2011. This was out, and so you could actually express that in a block quote quite straightforwardly. Whereas a tweet now can have entire movies in it, or threads of discussions and polls and things. So there's some value in them decorating it beyond just saying this is from Twitter. But that could imply that the block quote you copy could have a richer version of it in there as well, so that the block quote would show you something, even if if it's sort of beyond the text of the tweet. But that would be a bit more work for them to work out.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is the challenge is that people have, Twitter has encouraged people to use it as a place on the public record. They've been verifying accounts to say this really is this person speaking and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
And done that labeling, and so that's you see tick marks on the quoted tweets and so on. So that is both saying that yes, this was a real tweet and it was said by this person who we've done some effort to say is the person that is there. So they've put their imprimatur on it in that way of saying this is a bit more reliable than a quote on the site. And that's fair enough. And that is a useful service. There is some value in them being, no, this is the unambiguous version of that person posting on Twitter. But when it's been deleted, just taking that away is good. But if they're going to start letting you edit posts, that gets trickier. If other sites that have allowed post editing keep the edit history, and so you can look at that and see what's happened there. And that's important, because otherwise, if you don't have that, you can do all kinds of nasty tricks like completely changing the meaning of a post and then it appearing in a thread of responses to say the opposite of what it said before. And then you can say, look, these people are agreeing with this terrible thing, where in fact they were agreeing with something else that was anodyne that was said earlier. And that's happened a lot. There's lots of cases of that happening in the past, and I'm sure Twitter are thinking about that as they go to think about editable posts. But it's something you need to be very aware of. You need to be able to say, this person was responding to this earlier version of this post,
right? Some sort of trail.
And here's the edit difference and things like that. And it's not,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a solved problem, but it's something other sites have dealt with before and thought about, and showing edit histories. And I'm assuming that Twitter has got a reasonably smart group of people who are thinking about that there. So I think that'll probably work okay.
Well, it'll be really interesting to see how this develops. And I think the way that you laid this out, you structured this on your website, has at least called a lot more attention to this idea of this lack of permanence. We have another interview that's coming on the heels of yours, so I do have to kind of cut this short. But I just want to tell everybody, Kevin Marks, you're going to be on This Week in Google this next Wednesday, and I guarantee you this is going to be a big topic of conversation because this continues to be a pretty big issue.
Sure. One thing I would say is that if you are going to quote tweets, send the tweet to Internet Archive and archive.ph as well, so you've then got a separate external record of it existing. And that way you can link to that to say, no, it really did say that. Because otherwise you're in the state of, did it really say that at that time?
Yeah,
so if you've got a site that actually crawls it at that point, which you can trigger both of those to do that, that will be a way to basically set up a separate third-party arbiter if this was really said.
Some sort of external validation that has a lot more likelihood of persisting long-term. Let's hope so anyways. Yeah. Internet Archive, don't ever go away.
Yes.
Really want to thank you for carving out some time for us tonight where you are. Kevin Marks, microformats.org or kevinmarks.com is where you can find his blog, his post, his article on this behavior. So, Kevin, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week on Twig.
Thank you. See you then.
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin. Up next, we are going to look at AI-generated art. It's the latest from OpenAI, and it's super cool. Can't wait to talk to the folks at OpenAI about it. But we are going to take a quick break so I can tell you about IT Pro TV, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. The world of IT, it's colossal, and it's always changing. You probably know that. So where do you start to get the updated certs and training you need? Whether you're a seasoned IT professional or you're just getting started, I've got the answer. It's IT Pro TV. It's the online learning IT education platform you need to advance your skills in IT. IT Pro TV has 7 studios, and they film Monday through Friday, so they're always producing new content to help you learn. They have the most up-to-date content with every vendor and skill that you need to advance your IT career. Their courses go from the studio to their course library in 24 hours, and they're divided into 20 to 30-minute episodes for easy binging. They make sure you're prepared for your exams with their virtual labs and their practice tests. And the best part about IT Pro TV is that you can learn and get certified on your own schedule, and they always keep it entertaining. April is Linux month at IT Pro TV. Did I just hear Leo shout, Linux? So exciting. You can check out the on-demand webinar with Don Pizzette and Daniel Lowry focused on choosing the right Linux distro in 2022. And IT Pro TV's Linux Free Weekend is scheduled for April 23rd through the 24th. You don't want to miss it. And that's not Linux Free. That is the Linux Free Weekend. IT Pro TV has more than 138 hours of Linux training available. And here are a couple courses you may want to check out. Linux shell scripting, Basics, LPIC2 Linux Engineer, or Linux Command Line, and of course, so many more. Don't forget about your IT team, by the way. Check out an IT Pro TV business plan for your team today. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use the code TNW30. That's itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And of course, thanks so much to IT Pro TV for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. I just joined the waitlist for a very exciting project from OpenAI. Imagine a duck balancing atop a beach ball while eating popcorn.
Okay. Yeah, I see those all the time.
You might be able to imagine that, but maybe you couldn't quickly illustrate it. You couldn't quickly create it. Well, DALL-E 2 is the sort of latest iteration of OpenAI's DALL-E system, and my God, does it make amazing things.
Yeah, that's cool.
One of the researchers on DALL-E 2 is joining us today. It's Prafulla Dhariwal, who is here with us, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Mikah.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
So, of course, this thing is amazing. And I think that the best way to start is by sort of that old technique of pretend I'm a second grader. How would you describe DALL-E 2 to me if you were trying to kind of explain how it works, what it does, and what magic can be made with it?
So if you give DALL-E 2 kind of a description, it produces an image that would look like this description. So if I, as a kid, I'm trying to imagine a scene with a person, with a dog just staring at the stars, DALL-E 2 will kind of produce this imagination on like a canvas for you and will show it to you what it looks like.
So it is a way to create artwork wholesale out of just me giving that artwork a prompt, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So see, I think that's what makes this so interesting is you've got multiple things going on here, and I'm hoping you can kind of break it down for us because, an example of this is when I try to talk to Siri, sometimes Siri doesn't even understand what I'm saying. And so you have to use kind of specific wording to get Siri to respond how you want it to respond. Here, there are some examples on the site that we're showing now on screen. An astronaut lounging in a tropical resort in space, and then a third bit of cue to pull up all of these different images that were generated using this. So, are we working with both a natural language understanding, and then where does it kind of go from there? When it can take and understand what you're saying, how did you folks work to make it then also create the artwork that it's able to create?
So I'd like to cue in my colleague here, Aditya, who's also here on the call with us, who can actually tell you a little more about how we did this.
Excellent.
Thanks, Prafulla. So about a year ago, we released a system called DALL-E, which was a large neural network trained on a diverse data set of text and images. So the cool thing that we found is that a single neural network was capable of a diverse range of different types of image generation capabilities. For example, anthropomorphizing vegetables, like an illustration of a daikon radish in a tutu walking a dog, combining unrelated concepts like with an avocado armchair and so on. So Prafulla, Alex, and I have been working for the past year on a new iteration of the system that we're calling DALL-E 2.
Okay, so yeah, I was actually hoping, I'm glad you got there, because folks may have heard about DALL-E. This version, of course, is DALL-E 2. Could you just explain just a little bit more about what has changed in this second iteration that was not available kind of at the beginning with the first rendition of DALL-E?
Yeah. So DALL-E 2 kind of has two superficial differences from DALL-E 1. So the first is that the outputs are much higher resolution. So DALL-E 1 had an output resolution of 256 pixels, and the outputs were also quite blurry. The second difference is that the latency when interacting with the system is much smaller. So as a user, kind of in an interactive feedback loop with the model, it's a lot more enjoyable and the experience is more real time.
Ah, okay. That makes it. Now, can you, so for someone who has not been able to use this system, of course, you've shown on the website some really cool prompts. But as I was going through, the one thing that I was just curious about on my own was kind of how this looks for someone. Does someone sit down? Is it a browser interface? Is it like, how are you all interacting with the system to get it to pull up these prompts in the end? Do I simply have a flashing cursor and I'm able to type in a phrase and then hit enter and then it makes it happen? Or how does it look from your end?
So we have a research demo right now, which kind of looks like what you just described. You go to this website, you'll just type in a bunch of words that kind of describe what you want, and like an image will pop in a few seconds, and you'll be able to select from a few options there. And what you're looking at now on the blog, this in painting interface, in that one, you kind of upload an image, and then you can kind of with the brush, like erase parts of it. And then again, enter a description. Oh, hey, I want a corgi in this part. And then from the system, you'll get a new set of images that will put a corgi there.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no kidding.
That one is what actually kind of blew my mind more than anything on the page, because what I didn't realize about DALL-E is that it's not just completely creating images from wholesale, but you folks have worked out a way to take something that already exists and then understand the shadows, the coloring, and all of that kind of stuff, and be able to add something to the image. I mean, I think about, there's this hilarious person, I think originally on Twitter, on Reddit, and other places, where people would ask that person to do a Photoshop job, and the person would do a jokey Photoshop job based on what they recommended. And now it's like, I could pull this off myself with this tool. Right. It's so cool. So my question for you is, as two researchers who worked on this project, what do you hope to do with DALL-E 2? What was kind of the goal in creating this? Was it just simply, hey, we want to show that AI can do some pretty incredible things? Or did you go into it with specific tasks that you hoped to have this achieve in the end?
I guess broadly, one of the goals of OpenAI is to develop artificial general intelligence and release it in a way that's both safe and maximally beneficial to humanity. And, humans don't just work with text. We're also very visual, and a lot of what's important to us in the world is given in the form of images. And so DALL-E is kind of both a step in that direction to incorporate images and the visual world into the models that we're building, but also a step in the direction of figuring out, as we develop more powerful models, what kind of interfaces should be designed for people to use them. Because as time moves forward, both society and AI will kind of evolve and co-adapt, with feedback from one kind of channeling research, and research resulting in better interfaces and more powerful interfaces for people to work together with AI.
Absolutely. Now, this is just kind of a fun question. I'm curious if there have been any particularly interesting outcomes that you've had with DALL-E 2, where you kind of went, oh, I wasn't expecting that was what was going to be created, or that would be the generated art from the piece. Is there any ones that come to mind off the top of your head that just kind of had you go, huh?
I'm remembering the coffee machines, Aditya. Do you remember the ones? It was a kind of very wacky prompt, right? What was it, like coffee machines sucking human souls or something?
Actually, that
kind
one
of scary
was,
prompt.
That one was an espresso machine that makes coffee from human souls.
Oh, wow. That's awesome sounding.
Not to take the whole AI is coming for your souls thing too far, but...
No, I think that's funny.
I love that.
That leads us perfectly into the last question that I have for you, because you folks, I mean, OpenAI in general, you just mentioned, are kind of trying to make a safe future where AI is a part of it. And so there may be folks out there going, oh my goodness, it's coming for our artists. Next, it's coming for this, it's coming for that. Do people need to be worried about AI overlords? When they look at Siri or the Google Assistant, which I know is a whole different kind of thing, and in many cases does not feature a whole lot of AI, they are like, okay, we have nothing to worry about. But when you look at something like this and the sort of perceived skill that exists, there may be some concern. So what do you tell a person who's kind of has this low grade kind of terror about the future of AI as AI researchers?
I mean, I feel like our aim here was more to provide a tool that people can use. Like I think DALL-E can be used to supplement creativity. Like, you could have an idea and you could brainstorm with DALL-E to produce even more ideas and do more powerful things with it. So these tools kind of, I feel like, provide you more opportunity, more ways to, kind of ideate and discover new things. And you kind of, like if I want to produce a painting to hang in my house or something, I won't be able to produce this myself. But with a tool like this, I can do that. So I feel like at the same time, it's not going to replace an actual painter or an actual artist. Like, they can use this system to create new things, but I wouldn't think that these systems are going to replace these professions anytime soon.
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, I'll direct this to you, Aditya. There's this idea that I'm really fascinated with around AI and creativity, which is that as these systems continue to get more and more, progress down this line where it's becoming harder and harder to determine human touch inside of creativity versus a machine's creativity, I start to wonder at what point humanity or people will be willing to accept art that comes from the hands or the virtual hands of machines, let's say, in the same way that we do art that comes from a human being. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, because what you have created here is a tool that brings us closer to that reality. Obviously, it's not creating something from scratch. It's based on a training set, but that's certainly got to be somewhere down in the pipeline, and maybe that's the potential future destination of DALL-E somewhere years down the line. But how do you feel about the potential of, in the future, we as humans accepting the art that comes from a machine or a system like DALL-E?
That's a really good question. Like a human, the system is basically ingesting all of the things that it saw, and its source of creativity, it kind of comes from the diverse sets of concepts that it's encountered during the training process. And so, on one hand, it's great because, you could combine together art styles or, think of creations like the espresso machine making coffee from human souls, or like a cat submarine chimera, or things like that, which may have not existed. But yeah, I'd say it's difficult to kind of answer the question as to how people will kind of accept it and integrate it into a part of human culture. I feel like we're just at the beginning of this, and we're phasing this out slowly. And since the technology is so new, I think you probably have as good of an idea as I do about how this will go.
Yeah. Yeah, someone in our chat room actually pointed out if people can be convinced to invest in this is CR1, by the way, in our chat room. If people can be convinced to invest in imaginary currencies, I doubt there will be very much resistance to AI art.
Look, I'm super excited about all these new posters. I love dogs, and if I could have dog art all over my wall with dogs doing different things, I can't wait.
Unique to you.
Unique art. I am so pumped at what you've created here. I think it's incredible. Like I said, I joined the wait list because I just want to have fun with it. So sometime down the line, I'll hopefully be able to do that. But I want to thank you both for taking some time today to talk to us. Prafulla, Dhariwal, and Aditya, Ramesh, thank you for joining us here today. Of course, folks can head to openai.com to learn more about DALL-E 2. But if they wanted to follow you online, is there a way that they could do that?
You can find us on Twitter.
Yeah. My handle is model_mechanic, but you can find me by my full name.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both. We appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you create in the future.
Yes, I am too. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, and actually, our next story kind of veers into similar directions, which we're going to talk about a place on Reddit called, well, Place. Definitely worth checking out. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Expressvpn. If you're watching Netflix without using Expressvpn, well, it's kind of like you're going to the casino and you're only being able to play on the slot machines, which, quite frankly, that's boring to me. I don't want to just play on the slot machines. I want to play on all the other things. Why limit yourself like that? The big money's somewhere else. Now you can control where you want Netflix and other streaming websites to think you're located. That's just one of the many awesome functions of a VPN. It really comes in handy for sites like Netflix because it gives you access. Ultimately, you end up having access to content that you might not have in your country of origin. Netflix has different content libraries for every country, in fact, and they have thousands of shows. But without that VPN, you will only get access to a fraction of that based on, like I said, where you are right now. So you can control where Netflix thinks you are with ExpressVPN. We live here in the US. That means, we can't watch other countries' shows without a VPN on Netflix. Things like The Office US. That's part of the library in the UK right now. The Wolf of Wall Street, fantastic movie, by the way. You can find that if you're living in Canada right now. Friends, which left Netflix, I can't remember how long ago, like a year or two ago, and that ended up being a big deal. Everybody was like, no, Friends is going away. Well, if you're in the UK, you can still watch it on Netflix. But no matter what, if you have a good VPN like ExpressVPN, which, by the way, they make an app for your TV, for your computer, for your phones, whatever you happen to be using, you just select that country's name because ExpressVPN has all sorts of different locations for access. And then you tap a single button, you refresh the page, and boom, it refreshes with that country's content, and you can watch all that you want. Pretty awesome stuff. Definitely. And it's also kind of a fun kind of game to play. Open up your favorite streaming service, see what you see, activate that VPN in a different location, and you might actually discover shows you didn't even know existed, not just shows that you've heard of and you're like, oh yeah, great, I can watch The Wolf of Wall Street, but you're going to get access to entirely different content that might not even be available at all, might not even be translated potentially, I don't know, but that's the fun of it. So definitely check it out. Why ExpressVPN? Well, they've got blazing fast speeds, so you can stream in high definition with zero buffering. They're compatible with all your devices. Like I said, you can get it on pretty much almost every device that you have, phones, laptops, consoles, smart TVs, and more. They have servers in 94 different countries. That means that's 94 different places that you can throw that on and see what you have access to. It also works with other streaming services, not just Netflix, of course, BBC's iPlayer, YouTube, and a whole lot more. I've been using ExpressVPN for years. Actually have the ExpressVPN router, so I'm protected at the router level. And it's good peace of mind outside of like getting access to streaming content. It's just good peace of mind to know that I have more control over who sees me and my family's internet activity online. So be smart. Stop paying full price for streaming services and only getting access to a fraction of their content. Get your money's worth at expressvpn.com/TNW. Don't forget to use our link. That's EXPRESSVPN, expressvpn.com/TNW. TNW, and you can get an extra 3 months free when you do that. So that's a nice little bonus that you get there as well. ExpressVPN is awesome. Check it out for yourself. And we thank ExpressVPN for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so we're going to keep things in the creative realm here. I thought this was pretty cool. And actually, I have to give Leo credit because he did mark this for Twig yesterday, and they didn't end up talking about it. I wouldn't be surprised if he talks about it a little bit on TWiT this weekend. But when I started reading up on it, I thought it was super cool. Do you remember the $1 million homepage? I think it was called the $1 million homepage. This was early 2000s.
No, I do not remember the $1 million homepage.
Okay. Little history time. There was, once upon a time, I think this was 2005, a creator by the name of Alex2 created a site, and he basically said, there's 1 million pixels on this page, and I'm selling 1 pixel for $1, and I'm going to sell all of them. Hopefully, this was his idea. So this was the $1 million webpage. And the idea from the beginning was if I could sell each pixel on this page for $1, it's essentially like an ad placement, then I'd make $1 million.
Yeah.
It turned out it totally worked for him. And of course, everybody that saw this was like, why didn't I think of that? That's amazing. That's brilliant, right? So it was just cool. Not to mention it created this like cool kind of kaleidoscope of pixel art and everything. People got really creative with it. And of course, once it started to kind of gain momentum, then everybody wanted to be a part of the $1 million homepage. Well, Reddit has something similar, not necessarily because it's making anybody any money outside of Reddit, but it looks a lot like that homepage and is way more dynamic and just a lot more fun. It's a subreddit called Place. And this was actually created back in April Fool's, as an April Fool's experiment back in 2017. It reemerged this year, and it's just so cool. The idea is that any Reddit user can post one single pixel, or they call it a tile, on this blank canvas at Place. After that pixel is placed, so I go on there, I place a single pixel, a red pixel on this particular part of the grid. I must then wait 5 minutes before I can place another. And so what this does is it requires collaboration with others in order to actually create something meaningful. It's in a sense, it's like an orchestration of creativity. And what you're seeing right now is a little bit of an animation of kind of its existence. And I can't remember, is this the link that I put in there, the 24-hour link?
No, this is from the subreddit itself. I went to the subreddit itself.
Got it.
You can kind of view it. Like I can scroll.
So this is like the whole creation of it.
Yeah, and this is like kind of process at different points. Because every point they added like a new section of it.
Yeah.
This is like kind of when they added the second section, and then if I were to go further, they add a whole section down below.
Right, and so it just continues and evolves, and it's just so fascinating to me. So once this was kind of coming back, other subreddits like our Ukraine subreddit, Star Wars, trees, trans community, everybody kind of decided as a community to come together and figure out what they wanted to do on this canvas.
Because you start to see things forming and you can go, oh yeah, this is what I want to add.
Yes, exactly. They had to kind of and they had to collaborate, right? Because if you're only dropping a pixel every 5 minutes, you need a team to create anything around that idea, that vision.
So I was watching some of these people do it live on Twitch.
Exactly.
It was really amazing to see like the Spanish community, the French community, essentially like all these different communities coordinate in real time, getting their community members in their chat to actually go and like place pixels while it's happening, and also attack the other communities, and actually like whole coordination between like 50,000 to over 200,000 viewers concurrently on different streams.
Totally. Yes.
Really
right. In real time, watching all this happen. By the way, that voice is John Ashley, who produces behind the scenes. Usually does not talk on the show, so it's good to hear
this is really cool. Like watching, I was watching the entire weekend. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
This is happening real time.
It's pretty neato. I love it. Like you said, nothing is permanent on here. So the idea that like if my group started dropping pixels and started creating this thing that took us all day to create, another group could very easily come along and coordinate to either wipe it out, or they could coordinate to put something over it, or add a mustache, or put 3D glasses on it, or whatever. And it's just this kind of evolving image that's never perfectly stable because
Is it still live?
That's a good question. Twitter had put out a post to say, Reddit, we present to you the final r/place 2022 canvas, which actually tells me that it's probably locked at this point.
It locked. It finished up around on Monday. You can still go back to r/place and see the archived image as well as I was showing earlier, the entire process from beginning to end.
Yeah. So cool, though. But, when you watch the animation, you start to see these images that are just so complex, appearing in a certain portion of it. And you're like, oh, that's so cool. And then suddenly it gets wiped out, like completely. All that hard work just gets wiped out, and becomes something else, or becomes just a big red blob because someone came in there and just like it just completely transformed it. And then you would end up seeing those images that were there before reemerge. It's like we're getting it back.
Yes.
And it comes back and everything. It's just, it's like a living art canvas that I would be curious to see this experiment never ending if it just kept going and going. Although from a moderation standpoint, I have to imagine there's a lot of challenges with something like this. But that is one of the interesting things. Something that didn't really happen, thanks to the community, were takeovers by those who wish to use that canvas for things like symbols of hate and stuff like that. That didn't really happen.
That's cool.
Because you got enough people kind of policing this, right?
Yep.
For the greater good of the canvas. And I think it just prevented that from happening. Interesting factoid. The place was actually created by now internet famous Josh Wardle, who created Wordle.
Oh, nice.
He used to work at Reddit, and this was his creation while he was there.
That's neat. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good for old Josh.
Yeah, totally. He's definitely getting his recognition nowadays, right? Like,
absolutely.
He went from
that
person
guy
you've never heard of to suddenly like, whoa, wait a minute, you did that too?
Mr.
Wow.
Wardle did the place?
Mr. Wardle in the place. And then just before I wrap this, some stats. 16 million tiles placed in the first year. So the first time they did this, it was 16 million tiles. This year, 72 million tiles by 6 million users, 2.5 million tiles per hour.
Wow.
So,
wow.
There you go. Pretty cool creative thing that can only exist on the
collaborative creative
internet,
thing,
right?
yeah. Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we have reached the end of Jason's Story of the Week. My Story of the Week is up next. All right, my story of the week this week is about the latest, well, I shouldn't say the latest because it's one of several Senate bills, but it's one that is troubling big tech pretty heavily. It's called the American Innovation and Choice Online Act, AICOA. I don't know if that has any kind of fun sound to it. AICOA. I don't think it's meant to be pronounced that way. But this is, I like how Wired put it. It says, if you want to know how worried an industry is about a piece of pending legislation, a decent metric is how apocalyptic its predictions are about what the bill would do. By that standard, big tech is deeply troubled by the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. So this is the bill that was introduced by Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Grassley, which are the top Democrat and Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, respectively. So it's a bipartisan bill, and it is aimed at making sure that big tech players are not able to prioritize their own stuff, be it content or actual goods, over the stuff of other companies who need to use their services in order to exist online. So you can think of it as like Google not being able to prioritize YouTube videos over Vimeo or some other site if the relevancy is not there. It's an interesting thing because the bill itself is incredibly vague, but that was done on purpose because this is one of those bills that is aimed at having a group be in charge of this. In this case, it's the Federal Trade Commission. So basically it says, hey, FTC, your job is to figure out the details. We're making the bill that directs you to figure out those details and make this possible, and then also gives these groups bite in terms of being able to sue a company that does not follow through with what goes forth. as we said, you can tell how big of a deal it is based on what the companies are saying. Companies are saying that it would ruin Google search results. It would bar Apple from offering useful features on iPhones. It would force Facebook to stop moderating content, and it would even outlaw Amazon Prime. That was another quote from Wired. Now, that obviously was a little bit of a fear for me because I do use Amazon Prime and I do get a lot of value out of that service. And Wired actually quoted an article or a research from eMarketer who said that more than 150 million Americans, which is more than half of the adult population of America, use Amazon Prime. They are Amazon Prime subscribers. So there's a lot of people who would be bothered by that going away. But there's nothing to suggest that Amazon Prime would truly have to go away. What the argument is that there are companies who, if you've gone to Amazon before and you've looked up an item and you can see there's a line that says ships from and there's a line that says sold by. And typically, Amazon Prime items that offer Prime shipping, have at least shipped from Amazon. And of course, in the case where it's shipped from Amazon and sold by Amazon, then in that case, it is also Prime. But it at least needs to say shipped from Amazon. And that is a specific thing called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. What happens is third-party retailers on the platform send their goods to Amazon, and Amazon is in charge of the shipment and all of the logistics. So a company basically gives over its stock to Amazon. That way they can offer that multi-day fulfillment or that 2-day, 1-day shipping because of the fulfillment by Amazon. Amazon argues that FBA is something that would be prohibited in this law. That's not necessarily the case, though. So sellers who want to use FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, that thing that makes it so that you've got Prime shipping on items that aren't sold by Amazon, they have to pay for that. And the Senate bill prohibits a company from being able to offer preferred status or placement on the covered platform dependent on the purchase or use of other products or services. So they argue that they will have to stop offering FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, but there are some other experts, including Sumit Sharma from Consumer Reports, who says, quote, what the bill would do in that case would be to force Amazon to develop a system on its marketplace so that sellers can choose alternative fulfillment partners like DHL or FedEx or USPS or whatever. And then they'll have to ensure that what they show in the search results is not influenced by who's fulfilling the order. As long as I'm getting it within a day or two or whatever, they can still have Prime membership. So Amazon claims that, no, we can't do this. We'll have to stop offering FBA. All of you people out there, more than half of all adults in the United States, will not be able to go through with this. And I just have to stop for a second and say I'm very excited to learn that the Senate has confirmed Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first Black woman to serve on the Supreme Court. So that's super awesome. Huzzah. Anyway, so Amazon, of course, is the big company that's up in arms about this. But Google is worried that it means that their ad revenue is going to be cut because they will have to not prioritize their content or the content that companies pay to have in the piece. And essentially what's so interesting about this to me is for every argument that the big tech companies are making about how this is a bad thing, there's some other group who's saying, no, this law doesn't prevent that, or it doesn't prevent what they're saying it prevents. They're going, the big tech seems to be going for the absolute worst outcome, or in some cases, a little bit of a, what's the word? I mean, simply dishonest to sort of, melodramatic is the word I was looking for. Yeah. A very melodramatic outcome that is not necessarily the case. So
right. Yeah. Like I would be curious, Amazon saying, oh, well, if this happened, then we'd have to get rid of FBA. I would be curious to take that comment and then have it happen. Like, of course, this is a fake magical world that we live in our minds. But have them say that, have this happen. And then would they really get rid of FBI?
Are they really going to get?
Are they really going to get rid of it?
Are they going to be directed to get rid of FBI?
Or they're going to stick to their guns and be like, well, no, we got to prove that this was a bad idea. No, they're not going to do that.
No,
they're not going to do that.
That's the thing. What is fascinating to me is it used to be the case that the way that companies were able to influence government was strictly through lobbying and strictly through going to Congress and making those deals and those changes and stuff like that there. And now we continue to see so much of that also being thrown our way. And now it's a public argument that takes place. In fact, just this morning, as we were getting ready for the show, I saw a notification from Apple where they were quoting. Let me see if I can find it now. They were quoting. I've got every single place is taking up every single one of my history items. Good God, I didn't think I clicked on it that many times. Here we go. Apple report finds third-party apps see global success on the App Store. And the reason why that's worth bringing up is because currently Apple is essentially being accused of making its apps the priority, and that its apps get more viewership, and because they're already downloaded and installed on the phone, then that's prioritizing da-da-da-da-da. So just this morning, April 7th, Apple put out a thing from Economist's analysis group who said, look, third-party apps actually see are among the most successful apps on the App Store. And it's just funny to me because there's only two options there. It's like the 60 apps that Apple has, and then the 1.8 million apps that the third party has. So the numbers there, like, of course, third-party apps are going to be successful because of the saturation of third-party apps. But anyway, it's watching this now play out where you are trying to get public opinion more so than ever before because of how easy it is to reach the public and the role that plays in these companies trying to kind of fight back against the government regulations that are in place. So, yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on this, obviously. I think we both will, and see how these big acts that are coming through, American Innovation and Choice Online Act, and the other one that is aimed at App Store and other antitrust stuff. We'll see how this plays out, but I certainly would not want to be the FTC here.
The Open App Markets Act.
There it is, Open Act, yes. Open App Markets Act, Open App Markets Act. Having to be one of the groups that actually then has to take this nebulous act and turn it into all these rules is interesting. And what I also find fascinating, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is the difference between what is happening now versus what happened back when the movie industry was kicking off. When Hollywood was kicking off, when movies, first kind of hit the market and people were starting to get into movies, the government said, oh boy, we might need to figure out some way to regulate this to make sure that young folks aren't watching movies with choice themes in them. And so the movie industry said, we really don't want the government messing around with this. So they themselves came up with the rating system for movies and came up with that whole process and said, look, we're going to regulate this to the, we're going to be sticklers. We're going to make sure that this is done right. And by continuing to prove that they would, then the government never had to go, let us do that instead. And video games then, same kind of deal, where they were like, okay, we took it from Hollywood, we're going to do the same thing. For the most part, these tech companies have not done regulation of their own to that level. And I think it's mostly because the government for so long did not really overimpose itself on tech, because I wonder if there's a part of it that the folks that were lawmakers did not take it as seriously as they should have until it was too late, and big tech was big tech all of a sudden. And now that's
my feeling. Yeah, that's absolutely my feeling. It feels like
it's like, oh, that's over there.
Yeah, exactly. That's technology. Technology does a lot of cool things. And by the way, as a country, we're making a lot of money because we are a dominant powerhouse in technology. So let's just let that be what it is. Until it kind of got to the point to where in some ways big tech has more power, has the capability of having more power, more influence over people than government
Russia
in some ways.
Russia and Ukraine,
yes.
We've seen what these tech companies have done to sort of clap back, so to speak, at Russia. And in some cases, it's more damaging than what the governments can do. And I think that while that ended up being a positive thing overall because they were able to and are continuing to be able to do so much, that is also a moment where lawmakers have to go, oh, wait, we are not necessarily the huge power that we thought we were. So I'm not surprised to see so many bills coming through now.
Neither am I.
We'll probably continue to see that. But
absolutely.
You won't continue to see this episode because we're about to wrap up.
That's right. No, in about 3 minutes, you're going to continue to see something else. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That is where you can go to subscribe to the show, audio formats, video formats. Although this week I would suggest audio because there's a lot of visual stuff. Hopefully we did a good job explaining what we were looking at and everything, but it's another thing to see it with your own eyes. So twit.tv/TNW to check that out.
And if you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, yes, every single one of Twit's shows ad-free, you should check out Club Twit because you will be supporting us directly with $7 a month. You get every single one of Twit's shows ad-free. That's all about Android, iOS Today, MacBreak Weekly, all the shows, all the good shows, which are all of them. And you also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find elsewhere. That includes AMAs that we've had, all sorts of behind the scenes, before the scenes, after the scenes, everywhere else, and access to the members-only Discord server. That's a place where you can go and chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. If that sounds good to you, head to twit.tv/clubtwit to check it out. $7 a month to sign up. And if you're using Apple Podcasts and want a way to support a show directly, well, you can do that. Go into Apple Podcasts, look up Tech News Weekly, and you will see for the audio version of the feed, you tap on that and there will be a button that says subscribe for $2.99. When you tap that button and subscribe for $2.99 a month, you'll get the ad-free version of the audio feed right there in Apple Podcasts. If you would like to send me a message, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, that's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Check me out on Saturday with Leo Laporte for The Tech Guy, where we take questions from all around the U.S. and the rest of the world, answering your questions. And on Tuesdays for iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard, where we talk all things iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePod OS. It's all the OSs that Apple has. Yes. What about you, Jason Howell?
Find me at Jason Howell on Twitter. Also doing all about Android, twit.tv/AAA every Tuesday. And that's really about it. Also producing a bunch of Leo shows behind the scenes as well. Big thanks to the folks here who help us do this show. John Ashley, Burke, they were working overtime for today's episode. So really appreciate what they do. For without them, you wouldn't see or hear what you're seeing and hearing right now. Also big thanks to you. For without you, we wouldn't have an audience. So thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tariq Malik, the editor-in-chief over at Space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tariq and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.